Welcome back to Liminal Radio. We are back after our hiatus with a Halloween special, the best time of the year, and we hope you'll join us for the next season because it's going to be bigger, better, and probably scarier. What do you think, Gray?
I think it's definitely going to be exploring the deepest outer recesses of terror, or whatever that line from Hell Priest Pinhead, whatever we want to call him, was. So, just whatever we want to call that's what we're totally going to be doing. We're going to be getting into some Cenobite territory around here.
Angels to some, demons to others. Because we are going to scare some people, let's be honest.
So, guys, I am super excited to have you all back, and for us to be back, and to actually get to start a entirely new season of the podcast. We're getting back to our roots, doing some actual proper audio-only podcasts, and I think this season is going to be the best one. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. We have some great stuff planned, including the Halloween episode, where we're going to be discussing the origins of Halloween, our personal experiences with Halloween as it's depicted in movies and TV series, and one of my favorite subjects we're going to be talking about today, which is things that just feel like Halloween.
Oh, we got a whole bunch of those, don't we?
That's going to be a significant portion of the video, or in this case, podcast, because I'm so used to us doing videos previously. And guys, let us know if you appreciate the podcast format more, if you appreciate the videos. Let us know what your kind of preferences are. Make sure to give us lots of feedback. But I think that this is going to be really interesting because we're going to be talking about the things that feel Halloween, even if they aren't Halloween. What does the Halloween aesthetic, and we're not just talking about, green and black and orange. We're talking about things that indefinably feel like Halloween.
Oh yeah, we got plenty of examples too, but coming up first on the list, I think it's a lot of fun. I think nostalgia is always a fun thing, and I think talking about our personal experiences as kids and as adults with Halloween, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Because you mentioned a few really cool things when we were talking about this. I was like, wow, I kind of wish I lived where you live.
Well, and kind of the same thing that I was like, man, you guys have things we've never even heard of down here. So
now I've been talking about adult trick or treat night for years. I want to make that happen in my area. I don't think it's going to, but that's really not much else to say about that. Really simple, just a night when adults are allowed to trick or treat.
See, I wish culturally we could get that going. That would be amazing. That sort of segues into things where I live, though, because I live in Texas. I live south of Houston, but I live in a very rural area. We don't really do trick-or-treating down here. You would have to drive a really long way from house to house. There are neighborhoods, and some people who live in neighborhoods and know each other do a little bit of trick-or-treating. But mostly there's not a lot of that. One of the things that's actually fairly common down here is what they call trunk-or-treat. And what trunk or treat is where there will be a parking lot. Sometimes it's attached to a church, sometimes a school or a library or whatever. But a group of people will get together and they will park their cars, pop their trunks, and they will usually decorate their cars and decorate their trunks. And they will have kids come around in costumes and do the trick-or-treating thing, but it's from car to car instead of from house to house. And, this is to avoid people kids having to wander around neighborhoods, walk up to strangers' houses, that kind of thing. It's trying to minimize that. We'll talk about why that's such a big thing that people don't do down here, but we'll get to that in the next little segment. There's a very significant part of Halloween history that originates right here in the area where I live, but we'll get to that in just a second.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the less happy fun time stories of Halloween, but we'll get there.
Well, it is literally known as the thing that ruined Halloween. But back to the trunk or treat. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
But back to the trunk or treat thing. It's really interesting because people will go, they'll dress it. The people who are in the cars giving out the candy, they'll dress in really cool costumes sometimes. Some of the people, of course, like I said, they decorate their cars, but they'll also bring cattle trailers, because I live in Texas, everybody has cattle trailers, and they'll bring this big trailer and they will decorate it like a haunted house, including putting stuff in it where you walk through these scary decorated cattle trailers as little mini micro haunted houses. And I gotta say, depending on where you live and how much effort people put into it, some of the trunk or treats are actually pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's something that we could do in my area, because I live in a really rural area too. My nearest neighbor is about a 10-minute drive away, if we're not counting a guy across the street with the goose.
The goose being the neighbor in question.
Yeah, well, a fun story, though. I've talked about the goose before. I call him Beans. He kind of comes to the yard and hangs out and follows me around when I'm doing stuff in the yard. Strangely friendly. He just had a couple of kids, so congratulations, Beans.
And we all know that Beans will make an excellent father. if
Oh
geese
yeah,
do that. Although I think they do actually like co-parent. So actually, legitimately, Beans probably is being a dad right now.
I've seen him fight a car. Those kids are never going to be unsafe and win and win. But yeah, no, like my area is very rural too, and like I feel like this. What's the word for nostalgia for something that you never experienced? There's a specific word for that.
Future Hatter here. The word is anemoia.
It's probably in German. In my experience, if it is a really weird niche experience, German has a word for it.
Well, that's where the word niche comes from, Friedrich Nietzsche.
I do
That's
not
not.
think that's accurate, but that is a believable lie.
It's not. I just wanted to see if you'd be like, wait, really?
But that sounds like the kind of bullshit I could sell, so I'm here for it.
Yeah. But yeah, trunk or treat sounds really cool. Now, in my like I used to live like closer to the city. Now I live in the middle of nowhere, but I used to live closer to the city. And we had different neighborhoods, different towns, and some towns did what we call Beggars Night. Beggars Night is the night before Halloween, and for some reason, they do their trick or treating on that night. I've never quite been able to figure out why they do that. I tried to look into it, but it's such a niche thing, nobody seems to know.
I do really love the idea of having like two Halloweens, having the Beggar's Night and the regular night. I like the idea that you can finagle it where you can go trick or treating twice. So I think that is super cool.
And that is precisely what we did. We would trick or treat in Cheektowaga, and then we'd go back to West Seneca, I believe I was living at the time. And yeah, we'd trick or treat both nights. We'd have 2 big bags of candy, and then there'd be the family Halloween party. Not much to say about that, They had food, we had pizza, we all hung out and watched movies. Yeah, pretty basic stuff, but I got to trick or treat twice, and that's something that I'm pretty happy about.
So let me ask you, Hatter, were there ever any costumes that were particularly memorable for you, either that you wore or you knew someone else who wore, whether it was for being really good or really bad or whatever? Do you have any specific memories about costumes?
I have a few. Like, first of all, for a while, well, no, this hasn't changed. I shouldn't say for a while. But when I got obsessed with zombies, I, of course, dressed as a zombie for a few years in a row. And I put a lot of work into it. Like, at the time, my mom was working at a nursing home, and they had like this little Halloween party for the families of the workers and stuff. And I went there, and the second I walked in, because it was attached to a hospital, the person at reception like pulled their head back, and it took them a minute to realize, I'm in costume. They were like, okay, the hospital might not have been the best place for that costume because basically I just looked like a corpse. I was very good at like the special effects stuff, despite not having any real experience with it. So that was cool.
You were probably not the first person ever to walk into that emergency room looking like that, so that was probably pretty scary for them. I will actually add a funny, well, I think so, emergency room story that does pertain to why they probably looked at you that way. Me and Sharon were taking her to the hospital. It wasn't like a major emergency. I'm sure most of my followers know that Sharon has normal, she has MS, chronic health problems, so we go to the hospital a lot. It's no big deal. So we were in the waiting room at the emergency room waiting to get help, to get admitted into the hospital. And we're in line, and this guy comes walking in behind us, and he has this giant towel pressed against his leg. And the nurses came up to him and said, "Sir, what happened? What's the matter?" And he says, "So I was using a chainsaw, and it got into my leg." And the nurse says, "Holy crap, how bad is it?" He says, "I don't know. I haven't looked because I was afraid that if I looked, I would pass out and not be able to drive myself to the hospital. So I don't know. You guys are going to have to look." And she said, "Yes, sir. You come right this way." She kind of like apologized to us for him cutting in front of us. And I'm like, "No, ma'am. He is good. You are good. He goes right ahead. No, we are fine. You take care of him."
Chainsaw injuries do tend to take precedence.
Yeah, if you have been hit with a chainsaw, your day is worse than mine. You go first. Now, actually, I did overhear the nurses discussing that he was okay. It actually wasn't that bad. I even overheard her say, "Hey, that's not that bad." So he was all right. But yeah, if your injury just involves a chainsaw, if there is the word chainsaw in your story, you go ahead of me. So yeah, I tell that story for the purpose that these nurses have definitely seen people who look like zombies coming in. And I will say zombie cosplay, zombie costume, zombie Halloween costume. Although you could argue that Halloween is just, National Cosplay Day. But zombie costumes are always really good and fun. I actually have a friend that his wife is actually a makeup artist. Now, literally, as in she does hair, she does makeup, but she went to school for it. She went to the whole thing. This is her passion. She loves makeup and that kind of stuff. And one of the things she also really likes is the special effects makeup and the movie makeup. So she did him up for a zombie costume one time, did a fantastic job. including some really neat ideas like making raised scar tissue that she took the liquid latex, twisted toilet paper, dipped in the liquid latex, and used that to make the lifted scar tissue. She did some amazing looking scars and gore effects on him. And one thing he did that I thought was just super interesting was he took the shirt he was going to wear, took it out, and shot it multiple times with a gun so that when he put it on, it looked realistically like it had been shot.
That's fantastic.
So
So
that
if
was
you're
one
aiming
of
for
the
the
better
chest, you're
drawn-
kind of doing it wrong.
Go ahead.
So if you're aiming for the chest, you're kind of doing it wrong, but I see the point.
Well, that's why he's a zombie that's still walking around. Somebody aimed for the chest, not for the head. He ate them, and now he's still running around. If they had hit him in the head, he would be a downed zombie.
True. He's still alive and he's full. Seems like a good day.
Now, I will say, one of the costumes that was the most memorable for me growing up was when I was going to, I forget what it was. It was one of those little school-related Halloween party things where they throw a little Halloween party micro haunted house thing out of one of the elementary school. I was fairly young at the time. And my Aunt Margie, who was a really weird character, loved her to death. There is like family lore about her. But anyway, super weird woman. But so she had to come up with a costume for me kind of out of nowhere because it wasn't originally the plan for me to do. So she dressed me up as a hobo because that's a very easy costume to put together. And I kind of complained that, well, yeah, I wished I could have gone to something scary. So this woman goes on to proceed to tell me why hobos are actually terrifying and how you don't know whenever they're going to creep onto your farm and maybe cut your throat in your sleep or steal your chickens or abduct your loved ones. And I'm like, okay, hobos are scary, I give.
Some of those things are scarier than others.
I think she was just sort of picking random things, but it worked for me. I mean, as a kid, I'm like, okay, nope, hobos are scary, okay.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, full disclaimer that we are not stereotyping all people who are without housing. And of course, there are different types of people who might be without homes, so we're not just talking about homeless people here. For one, when you say a hobo specifically, we are referring to a type of person who was a migrant worker, like in the 20s, and lots of periods throughout history, and that rode the rails from place to work to place to work. Funny thing about that is my grandfather on my mother's side was a hobo when he was younger and would proudly say that he was not a bum. He worked for a living, and in between jobs, whenever he would go from place to place to be like migrant farm labor, he would actually engage in underground fist fights where people would bet, and he would fight and bet on himself, of course, and generally did really well. So this dude was telling me this whole story about his time as a hobo fist fighter.
Which is just plain awesome.
Yeah, which I love that story. I thought that was really cool, which is funny because in his old age, he was just the meekest, mildest, nicest guy you could ever meet. This like really sweet old man. You would never guess he had been a bare knuckles brawler as he rode the rails across the country.
Yeah, it's always people who are the nicest people who have stories like that, because they know they can be nice and it's not going to affect them adversely, because if they have to defend themselves, they absolutely can.
Those are always the people who are nice because they got nothing to prove.
Exactly. Now, I did have one other costume I wanted to bring up, because for 4 or 5 years in a row, I dressed as King Diamond, and I know you mentioned you weren't familiar with him. What he is, he's like a heavy metal singer, and like all of his albums are like written as stories. He's been called the Stephen King of heavy metal, but if you can't tell, I'm kind of a huge fan. So, I dressed as him for probably 4 or 5 years in a row.
And that is just awesome. And as you said when we were first discussing this for the episode, I am unfamiliar with him, but I'm going to have to check his stuff out, because the Stephen King of heavy metal all those are words I like. I like every one of those words. So I'm definitely going to have to check him out.
And they're pretty great in that order, too.
So as Hatter and I were both saying, we're both from very rural areas where we don't really do trick-or-treating in the traditional sense of going to people's houses. It's just not super common. It happens, don't get me wrong, but it's not very common. And especially, I'm 40 years old. I was born in 85. Hatter, what year were you born in?
89, 36.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of the era we grew up in. Here's the thing. I grew up in the era, and I know Hatter remembers this, where people were in a panic about people poisoning candy, putting razor blades in apples, all that kind of stuff. I actually remember there being local hospitals offering to x-ray your candy to make sure it didn't have anything in that. Do you remember that, Hatter?
Oh yeah, and I also have to say, if you really want to cause problems, putting a razor blade in an apple is the stupidest thing you do because that kid's gonna throw that apple out.
I was about to say, no one would ever know, because who the heck is going to eat an apple that's given to them on Halloween?
A nerd, maybe, not the good kind.
Just in general, those fears are not very founded because we don't really have a lot of, or to my knowledge, any real cases of people poisoning or otherwise tampering with Halloween candy. What we do have is the case that made everyone think this was a massive problem, and this is the guy who is famously known as the man who ruined Halloween. His name is Ronald Clark O'Brien, and he actually lived in the Houston area. This is my area. So that is the Houston. I live south of Houston. I live in Brazoria County, so I'm in the Houston area, and this guy lived in the Houston area. So the guy who literally ruined a holiday is from the same area of Texas as me, which sucks. Not a great thing to be known for. But what happened is he took his child to the hospital saying, "Hey, my child has been poisoned by this candy that we got during Halloween," and the child had been poisoned with cyanide, and unfortunately did pass away.
Yeah, cyanide will do that.
Yeah, kind of what it's for. So, of course, they began investigating, and turns out, no, this was not candy that this guy had been given on a trick-or-treating thing. The guy had intentionally poisoned his kid's candy in order to collect a life insurance policy.
And that's just like, wow. I don't even really have the words for somebody who could do something like that because, as much as we joke around, we make morbid jokes, that's pretty screwed up.
Oh, that's absolutely twisted. And not only did he murder his own son, he actually tried to poison multiple other, I think like one was the child's sibling, so another one of his kids, and I think two other ones were just random children that had also gone trick-or-treating with them, but the other children didn't eat the candy. They threw it away for whatever reason. I think probably because it was a poisoned pixie stick, and I don't feel like most kids are like highly prioritizing the pixie sticks. So the fact that he chose crappy candy may have been what saved some lives here.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I liked pixie sticks, but there's better stuff. I mean, let me tell you about another Halloween tradition we have, just to lighten the mood a little bit here. Well, not one that I have, but one I had when I was an adult and I was working in insurance. We had our conversations around the office, and one of the things that we talked about was candy. The way we rated candy was by days. So, and referring to trick-or-treating. So day one, the first day after trick-or-treating, that's the best candy. Day one candy is your best candy. Your Reese's Cups, your Snickers, all that stuff. Day two candy is the candy that's good, but it's not the stuff you go out of your way to get. Day three is candy that's okay. Day four is candy that's bad, but you're going to eat it anyway. Day five is when you really need some candy, but otherwise wouldn't eat it, and it's probably going in the garbage.
So day five is candy corn, is what you're trying to say.
Shut your mouth. I'm sorry, that just kind of popped out, but I genuinely do like candy corn. I get why people don't like it, but I genuinely enjoy it.
You know what? We're all allowed to like weird stuff because I genuinely love black licorice.
So do I.
So I think we may just be the weirdos here.
Yeah, I'm all right with that. But yeah, no, we had like a whole list, and we actually, because we couldn't talk about anything actually interesting at work because of professionalism, so we would make tier lists of candy, and like we would get into not really arguments, but like we would get really passionate about all this. Like somebody in our team said Snickers was day 5, and we're all like, no, what's wrong with you? On a similar note, I also saw a video earlier where like, these are the 3 worst candy bars. It was, of course, AI in the US. And they're like, Snickers, it's got 27 grams of sugar and this many calories. I'm like, oh my God, a candy bar has a lot of calories and sugar? Candy is high in sugar? Oh my God, when were they going to tell us this? Why would they make this stuff up? Why would they lie to us about this all these years? I thought candy was as healthy as a salad. You know what? I'm going to stop because I went on for a while about this, but you see my point.
Actually, and I'm going to push back against these people saying that because you know what? A Snickers bar, standard size, not king size, a standard full-size Snickers bar is 250 calories. Now, I'm not saying that you should just snarf every Snickers bar you can get your hands on, but a 250 calorie snack is not crazy if part of a balanced diet. So I'm just saying, don't hate on Snickers. They are healthier than they sound and do have at least a little bit of protein in them because of the peanuts.
And they taste great. Let's be honest. Snickers are just delicious.
Oh, you know what? That's the main thing they deliver is joy. They deliver a lot of joy. I'm just saying that is a very efficient joy to calorie ratio.
Absolutely. So, what were the candies that were your day one candies?
Definitely anything with chocolate. So the anything chocolate is a day oneer. There's going to be your Reese's Cups, your Snickers. I don't think I was ever lucky enough to find the house that was giving away full-size Snickers bars. You know, that's what everyone always jokes. That's the house you want to go find. Yeah, I don't think I ever found that. Again, I mostly didn't go like house to house trick or treating. Although a couple of times my parents did drive me around to like people's houses they knew, but mostly it was like at events and stuff. So I never did score the full-size Snickers bars. But Reese's Cups are always good. The snack size Snickers were always really good. I will say that for me, anything Hershey's, so like a Hershey's bar, Hershey's Kisses, the things that are just unadulterated chocolate, that's a like low day one, maybe day two for me.
Yeah, I see why. I mean, if it's almond Hershey's, then I love it.
Oh, absolutely. You put anything in that chocolate, and that's a day one for me. But I mean, just a classic Hershey's bar or unflavored, just the chocolate Hershey's Kisses. Now, any of the Hershey's Kisses that have something in them, like, oh my goodness, now it's not, you normally don't see them around Halloween, but around Christmas, you'll see the chocolate covered cherry Hershey's Kisses. Those are amazing.
Yeah, I'll eat a whole bag of those in under 10 minutes. I don't even care. I'll eat the wrappers. But yeah, no, I really actually do enjoy just plain Hershey's, but not in the fun size, because the fun size are like thicker. The full size regular Hershey bar is thin and kind of light, and I do enjoy it, but the fun size one's not as much.
Just so that you know that me and my wife do love Snickers bars. In my freezer at any given time is what we call emergency chocolate, which is a stack of Hershey's bars, just in case you have a chocolate related emergency.
Yeah, when can I move in?
Well, I mean, I do got a spare room. I'm just saying.
Well, actually, like, you'll hear me gone for about 8 hours, and like for some reason you're still sitting on chat, and you hear a knock at the door.
Hey, man, I got a chocolate emergency. Can you hook me up?
But yeah, day one, day two, those are your good candies. Now, when I was younger, Reese's Cups were huge on the day one. I still really like Reese's Cups, but I don't love them the way I did when I was a kid. But they're still day one, don't get me wrong. Just pointing that out. Now, for me, and I'll ask you this next, but my really unique day one candy that everybody else thinks is day five, Dum Dums. You like Dum Dum Pops?
I like them okay. I'm in between. They're not my favorite, but I also don't hate them.
I buy them regularly just to have in the house. I love them. I don't know what it is. Now, they're not day one. They're day two, but there's still something I really like. And as you already know, I like candy corn, so all my day five stuff is pretzels, peanut butter crackers, bags of potato chips. What is wrong with you people? Give me candy.
Yeah, if it's not candy, it does not belong on a trick or treat menu.
Though we did have one lady who lived in our neighborhood who we all knew, so we didn't feel the need to check the candy. Like we've all known her for years. She would make us chocolate covered potato chips, and that was way better than you think it was.
Oh, no, that is legit. Chocolate covered potato chips is one of those weird things that people make that are amazing. It's not especially Halloween related, but have you ever had a firecracker?
The name
That's
for some reason. Yeah, I know. For some reason, like I know what that is, but I can't seem to bring it to mind. Yeah, refresh my memory.
It's very popular around here. I'm not sure if it's regional or if it's more of a common thing, but you take saltine crackers, they brush them with oil, and then they season them. They come in lots of different seasons, and then bake them in the ovens to solidify the seasoning and everything. And it's basically a way to make highly flavored saltine crackers. And the most common seasoning is red pepper flakes and garlic and a lot of other stuff. But they're these very spicy seasoned saltine crackers, and they are amazing.
I know what you're talking about. I have made stuff with saltine crackers. Like I never really made the spicy ones, but like I'd make the chocolate bark ones for Christmas and stuff. But no, for some reason I was thinking it was some kind of summer sausage or Slim Jim, like fat Slim Jim type thing.
No, these are literal crackers, not so much in the firecracker firework type sense.
That makes sense. No, you can do a lot with saltine crackers. People don't give them enough credit.
Absolutely agree.
Right, but all that aside, as I mentioned, we all have a day five candy that we consider to be part of day one or two. Mine's Dum Dum Pops. What was yours?
Weirdly, I think it's also sucker related, and it's a tie between two, which is Tootsie Roll Pops or Tootsie Pops, and whatever you call the one that has bubble gum in the center.
Blow Pop.
Blow Pop. Love both of those. I like the whole thing, and of course, as a kid, I would always just immediately, instead of really sucking on them, suck on them for about a minute and then just crunch them. I loved both of those, the Tootsie Pops, the Blow Pops. A lot of people consider that trash. They're some of my favorite candy.
For me, it depends on the flavor. If you can find banana Tootsie Pops, I will eat those all day, every day.
I didn't even know that was one of the options.
I found it. There was a Chinese restaurant I used to go to around the corner from me, and a lot of the smaller restaurants, they got those little I don't know what you call it. It kind of looks like a cardboard box with suckers sticking out, and it's for charity. You put 50 cents in, you take a sucker. That's the only place I ever saw them. I asked where she got them. She said she didn't know it came with the thing.
I absolutely remember those little sucker things. That's one of those like core memory unlocked. I remember those from when I was a kid.
Yeah, they'd have them like at smaller restaurants. Like every Chinese restaurant I've ever been to, specifically Chinese food, always had them.
So talking about Halloween traditions, I feel like a big Halloween tradition for a lot of people is haunted houses. And I love haunted houses. I actually really enjoy them. I have a few like memorable things of haunted houses. Have you ever had any like really fun haunted house experiences, Adam?
Yeah, I have. I have two things I could think of specifically. One's really a lot more interesting than the other, but there's, of course, here in Western New York, we have what we call the Haunted Catacombs, which is just that. It's like a haunted house. People dress in costumes, try to spook you. And yeah, I remember my first experience with that. I was absolutely terrified. And yeah, I was a kid, so that's fairly normal. There's not much to say there. Now, the other really great experience, not really a haunted house per se, but there's a place that was out in rural New York that sold pumpkins. A pumpkin patch. And they had like all this little stuff, and when I was a kid, it was the coolest thing ever. Like they had tunnels you could crawl through, and you'd see ghosts and monsters and stuff. Like tents made out of hay that you could stand in with various like standees and monsters and stuff. But one of the coolest memories that I have is like they had this kind of scarecrow type thing they called Pumpkinstein, and for some reason, me and my brother thought, let's try to talk to it, and we did. And they had a speaker in it because like they would have it say things and stuff. And the guy who runs the place actually got a microphone and started talking to us and like making up lore and stuff for Pumpkinstein. So that's one of my best haunted house adjacent.
That is absolutely awesome. I love that. That is something so cool that people do to make Halloween just magical for kids, and I'm here for it. That is so cool.
Yeah, I would say Halloween. I have never in my life had a bad Halloween. There have been less than great Thanksgivings, less than great Christmases, but I can't remember once not having a great time on Halloween in all of my 36 years on this earth. So that's a big part of it.
Now, I will say how much I love spooky stuff, how much I love Halloween, how much I love all this haunted house type stuff. And of course, whenever we're discussing haunted houses, in this context, we're referring to haunts, scare attractions, that kind of thing, not literal haunted houses. That would be a completely different episode, one we will probably get to. But I love this stuff so much. And one of the ways that I can prove that is on our honeymoon, which was in the middle, my wife and I, of course, Sharon, in the middle of summer, when we went to San Antonio, Texas, and went on the Riverwalk, which is just a district of San Antonio. Really nice place, lots of restaurants, very touristy, lots of attractions, super cool, very nice. It was an amazing honeymoon. One of the things we did is they have a year-round haunted house there. And that's one of the things we did on our honeymoon is the two of us go to a haunted house in the middle of summer in San Antonio, Texas.
And that is a sign that your marriage is built to last.
Yeah, it was definitely, we are the same type of people. We were having so much fun. And of course, me and her, we're both very enthusiastic and excited people. So we're running through this haunted house. We're holding hands. We're charging first. We want to be scared, which is funny. So a lot of the scare actors did pass us over and try to scare the people like pulling up the rear who were terrified. So they got a lot of the scares and we actually tended to run past them. There were some really fun stuff in the haunted house. And the thing of you talking about the Pumpkinstein and the guy speaking to you through the microphone, out in front of this haunted house, they had a really cool optical illusion where they had what you assumed was a animatronic because it looked like a zombie guy in a top hat, but it was only half of him. He was only like from the chest up. So you assume it's an animatronic. Turns out it's just an optical illusion and it's an actual guy.
Oh, how did that go?
Oh, it was awesome. He would terrify people because they just thought he was an animatronic. And then suddenly he'd start talking to them or like reach out to them. And that was just the thing out front of the haunted house to draw your attention in and get you to go in. Inside the haunted house, they had some, they were a lot of them were very classic scares, but I think a lot of them were very good. They also had a lot of weird ones. Like one of the classic ones is, of course, I thought was just very effective, where there's this guy in a straitjacket banging on glass of "Take me with you, don't leave me," and you walk away. Of course, as you see him, y'all freaking out. As this big scary bald guy, and he's banging on the glass. And then as you turn a corner, you see that the wall has been like knocked out, and he comes charging at you, screaming, "You!" It was great. It was scary. They did some really cool classic stuff like that.
Yeah, those things were always really cool to me. Like, I mean, the problem is for me, as a kid, I really wasn't, but I was like, how to put this? At this point in my life, I'm basically completely immune to jump scares. And I mean, something comes running at me head on, I might flinch a little bit. Yeah, like as an adult, I'm not really good at getting jump scared. As a kid, I kind of was, but you know what? I appreciate like the atmosphere, the artistic part of it, the costumes. I really think that haunted houses are cool, even if I can't get that, poop your pants jump scare.
Yeah, we both kind of had the same thing. We were never really scared. But we very much enjoyed the horror atmosphere. There was, and one of my favorite, because we were cracking jokes, and we were actually, in some cases, even making the actors laugh when they weren't supposed to. Because at one point, you enter this section that's all dark, and it's completely dark. You can't see a thing. And they're trying to give you these sensory scares. So, like, as you're walking, there's like these hanging pieces of cloth or fabric or something that hit you in the face. And then you feel these, like, mists. And then you feel little puffs of air. And me and Sharon are walking, and we start feeling this. And we go, wait, did we get lost? Did we wander into the car wash? Guys, I think we're in the car wash. And from the darkness, you hear people laughing. The other time when I think we got them, of course, we were just being cut ups and we were having a great time. You walk into this room and there's darkness and shadows and mirrors kind of all over the place. And you hear, "You can't see us." To which we immediately responded, "Yes, we can. You can't see us at all. You're right there." Of course, we couldn't see them, but we just start heckling back at them. Again, heard laughing from behind the walls. So I think they enjoyed having us. At least I hope so.
Yeah, they probably do. Like, I think that people who do that stuff, I think they enjoy a challenge. I would.
Which actually makes me think of another amazing haunted house experience I had. We have a local haunted house attraction called Creepy Hollow. It's one of the, it's not big, but it's our decent sized one around here. And I went there one time with a bunch of friends from work. It was around Halloween. And the thing is, I was friends with a guy who knew everyone there. So whenever I went in, they knew I was with him. And so since I was with him, they all knew they could pick on me. So they just assumed I would be a good sport. And of course I was. So at one point, one of the first things that happens is this guy who is a scarecrow on stilts, who again is a friend of my friend, so he knows he can jack with me, comes up to me and is like leaning over me being all creepy and takes his big scarecrow glove and sticks his finger in my ear. And I'm like, dude! But of course I'm laughing. It's a real, I'm being good game for everyone to jack with me because it's good entertainment. Everyone else is having a ball of all the scare actors messing with me specifically.
As long as everyone was having fun.
There was also another attraction there. And of course, there was the classic one of we're walking through the zombie-infested woods. Everyone's holding hands. And the zombie comes up and takes the person's hand. And then they look back and realize the person that they thought they were holding hands with is now a zombie. That's classic. That's always a good one.
That's fantastic. If you can pull that off, too, that's tough to pull off.
They did it perfectly. I heard the scream from like 100 yards back. That's
excellent work right there. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been to a haunted house of any kind. Just because, not a lot of people, like, especially since COVID, there just hasn't been a lot of that,
Oh, yeah, it's a little harder to find. Luckily, we still have plenty of them around here. I will say one of the other great experiences at Creepy Hollow for me was we were at one that's a fun house. So it was scary clowns, fun house mirrors, all that kind of thing. And one of the things they had you do is wear these 3D glasses just to make everything even wonkier. And as I'm walking through, you have these clowns like with machetes and knives and stuff like that, looking all scary. And I made the mistake of cracking a joke and saying, "Wow, they look so lifelike." Of course, I knew they were real clowns, but I had to make the joke. So now all these clowns are gathered around me. I am surrounded by murder clowns as one of them is like waving his knife in my face. And my group is, of course, getting ahead of me. So I'm like, excuse me, sir. Like, trying to take it left. Sir, I just need to, sir, my group is, if I could just, and I'm trying to just politely get by murder clown. It was hilarious, and they had a ball messing with me because I made the mistake of saying, "Oh, they're not real." No, they look. I know you're real. It's okay. We can move on.
That's fantastic. It sounds like a fun time. I wish that I had gotten to go to more of those types of things, but it just, for whatever reason, it was never in the cards. It wasn't even just after COVID. Like, we got to go a few times and it was fun. I'd like to actually star in one of those at some point, like, as a monster, but that's a story for another time.
Oh, I actually have several friends who are scare actors, and I have several mutuals on TikTok who are also scare actors. So, scare acting is super cool, super fun. I love that. I also think it would be really fun to do. And scare actors are a unique breed. They are the type that are usually acting out their own mental illness, or at least that's what they'll tell you, because they really like the edginess. And scare actors do tend to be kind of on the edgy side, which does actually segue nicely into something I wanted to talk about, which is I think we got to talk about McCaney Manor, because I don't think you can talk about Halloween and haunted houses without talking about the quote unquote scariest, most extreme haunted house in the country, which is mostly just known for being very, very controversial.
Oh, is that the one where like you have to sign all the paperwork and stuff, and they'll give you $10,000, but they're allowed to like beat you?
Yes, that's you. You got it. That is McCaney Manor. To give the $2 version to everyone who may be unfamiliar with them, is you have to sign all these waivers because it's an incredibly extreme haunted house, and supposedly no one has ever finished it, and all this kind of stuff. You can, tap out whenever you want, that kind of thing. But if you complete it, you get money and all that kind of thing. One, generally speaking, most people do not believe that they are playing fair and being honest, and that they're not going to let you win. But the thing is that, again, not really sure it counts as a haunted house because they're literally allowed to do things like waterboard you, because that's part of the thing. It's not just a touch haunt, because of course there are different haunts with different rules. Some of them they're allowed to touch you, some of them they're not allowed to touch you. McCaney Manor, basically you're signing papers saying they're allowed to torture you if they want, force feed you stuff, that kind of thing. So generally speaking, most people do, and of course then there's a lot of controversy around the guy who runs it, which I won't really get into, but just generally being accused of being a creep, which I'm not going to come down one side or the other. I don't know the facts, but he doesn't have a great reputation in the industry, and McCaney Manor is very, very controversial. But I felt we should at least talk about the fact that there is the quote-unquote most extreme haunted house in the country.
Yeah, it's mostly just edgelord stuff from what I understand anyway.
Now, I will say that the videos that they made for a while back when they were kind of popular were pretty good videos of people going through the haunt and having to do all these extreme things. But I feel that they made much better 1-minute internet videos than it actually is as a legitimate haunted house.
Yeah, like you said, I don't have the facts, but I do remember reading that like there were people who technically finished it, but they found some technicality and refused to pay them. Like apparently, yeah, the thing fell out of favor for a lot of apparently really good reasons.
Oh, and I heard, of course, it's the sort of thing that started as a Tumblr post and people have been repeating it for years. But I do think this is worth talking about because I think this would be hilarious, is referring to someone should make a haunted house that has rooms based on social anxiety. So what we're talking about is, for instance, you would have a hallway that has no exit that leads to a door that says, "Do not enter, employees only." And there's no other way to get out other than to go through the door that says you're not supposed to go through it. And then if someone is brave enough to open it, there's a guy in half a gorilla costume eating a sandwich sitting at a table saying, "What are you doing? You're not allowed to be back here." I know that someone listening to that idea just had a panic attack, just imagining having to walk through a door that says employees only. Another idea that they had where you open it up and it looks like the storeroom where they keep all their costumes. And when you open it, it causes a big thing of paint to spill everywhere. And then someone runs out asking you what you did and accusing you of ruining hundreds of dollars worth of costumes. That would also be way scarier than a vampire to a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm gonna make this happen if nobody else does. Like, there's got to be other social phobias you can screw around with too.
Oh yeah, make it that they walk out on a stage and are there handed a piece of paper and said, "Yeah, unless you give this speech, we're not letting you continue the haunted house."
They probably just leave.
I think a lot of people would. I actually think that rather than give a public speech, a lot of people would nope out of the haunted house.
This is a good idea. But social anxieties aside, there's some pretty great historical lore about Halloween too. there's folklore about everything, but Halloween's got quite a bit of it. And we want to talk a little bit about that.
For one, I find one of the interesting things is just how many different holidays it really is and how they're different connected and they're about different things. I will say probably the one most people are familiar with that's kind of one of the origin holidays for Halloween is Samhain, which is an Irish, Scottish, generally Celtic holiday, which is kind of the harvest festival, beginning the fall, beginning the winter, that kind of thing. Not the beginning, but it's in between the solstices, all that kind of thing. And one of the things that's interesting about it is it's not inherently a spooky holiday. It's not necessarily, I mean, now there are people who believe that it is a time where there is a thinner veil between the spirit and the real world and that kind of thing. But just generally, it's not seen as like a scary, spooky kind of holiday. I will say one thing that I find, and of course it's, traditional to Celts, very popular with like a lot of neo-pagans and Wiccans and things like that. One of the things I find really fun is that people will get super mad if you mispronounce it because it is spelled like it should be pronounced Samhain. Even when they mention it like in the TV show Supernatural, I think they called it Samhain, which is not how you pronounce it. You pronounce it Samhain because it's a Celtic word and Irish is a weird language. So it is Samhain. So anyone, if you see a word that looks like it should be pronounced Samhain, it's Samhain. Just so you know, that way no pagans yell at you.
Ah, the Irish language, where the pronunciations don't matter and the rules are made up.
That is so accurate. I think that is deeply accurate. If we have any Celtic-speaking people in the audience, make sure to let us know if you agree with that, because I feel like you guys would be on our side with this.
And we love your folklore and your culture. That was certainly not intended to be an insult.
No, that is good-natured ribbing, because we Irish folklore, Celtic folklore in general is my favorite folklore of all time in the entire world. So absolutely amazing.
Definitely up there for me too.
One thing I will say that is really interesting is that technically Samhain is on November 1st, but it's generally celebrated on what we consider to be October 31st. The reason why is in the Celtic calendar, a day begins at sunset. So when the sun sets on one day, the next day begins. That night is part of the subsequent day, which I find really interesting. So technically, we're celebrating it on what we consider to be 31st, but they would consider it to be November 1st.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
That's also how the Jewish calendar works. So like whenever you have a Jewish person who's celebrating like the Sabbath or whatever, for them, the Sabbath begins on the sunset of the day before. So that's a lot, and a lot of older calendars work that way because of course they didn't have, a clock to tell them when midnight was. So they measured from sun up to sunset.
Well, that makes sense. So the night's at the beginning of the day on these calendars.
Yeah, and that's why they would say that Samhain would begin on sunset on October 31st. So they would agree that we're generally celebrating all our Halloween stuff on the correct day because we generally, though we celebrate Halloween on the 31st, most of the stuff for Halloween doesn't start until the sun sets anyway. So technically, we all agree we're on the same date. We just may disagree on what the name of that date is.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Kind of.
Now, one thing I will say that I find really, because I live in Texas, lots of Hispanic culture, so I find the Day of the Dead really interesting, which is, of course, kind of is popular in Mexico, popular in Latin America, and it's the celebrating, it's had on the same day as Halloween, and it is celebrating all of your relatives who have passed away, and people leaving offerings for them, and they go clean their graves and that kind of thing. And I feel like Day of the Dead is a lot more in the public eye after the movie Coco.
I was quite familiar with Dia de los Muertos, but I've never seen Coco, I'll be honest. But you know that I have a strong aversion to any 3D animated film. So I want us to go back to 2D animation. So that's why I haven't seen it. But I'm sorry, I just needed to work that in there.
But and I really do agree. Although I will say Coco was very good, and I was actually very impressed with it. It did a great job of capturing the spirit of Dia de los Muertos and had just some really great emotional through themes. And you want to talk about something that feels like Halloween? Absolutely. Coco feels like Dia de los Muertos. It feels like Halloween. All the skeletons are really cool. So I have to say, Coco did a very good job on, generally speaking, capturing that vibe. So it fits really well in for this episode. And I feel like that's where a lot of people have heard about it from.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like it's a pop culture thing, and I know that like because took every I took every Spanish class I could in high school, and like the teacher was really immersed into the culture of like everything related to that. So we actually, instead of doing Halloween in that class, because we always, it's school, you do stuff for Halloween. We always did something on November 1st in the Spanish classes, and it was Dia de los Muertos.
And that's so cool. And I love that kind of thing too. I also love all the like sugar skulls and all the food and pastries and that kind of thing that's related to that. I always think that's super cool.
Listen, anything that's like a dessert or candy, it makes me happy.
Now, I will say one bit of folklore that I really want to talk about before we move into media, which I'm very excited to get into the media of Halloween because there's a lot of it. But one bit of folklore I wanted to discuss is the story of the jack-o'-lantern and how they came to be. It's such an iconic part of Halloween, and it's one of my favorite stories.
Jack of the Lanterns, that guy?
Yep, that would be him. Also known as Stingy Jack in at least a lot of the Irish mythology. Because now it's worth noting that there are different versions of the story. There was actually a Jim Henson show called The Storyteller, which told like his own reinterpretation of it as a Russian version, but that I won't get into that whole story. By the way, you want to talk about something that was sometimes unintentionally horror and some really great stuff was Jim Henson's Storyteller series. Fantastic story.
Jim Henson had a lot of stuff that felt Halloweeny and creepy when you really wouldn't expect it to, but he was brilliant.
Oh yeah, one of the greatest media creators of all time, in my opinion. But the story of Stingy Jack is interesting because it's basically this guy who goes out drinking and realizes he's drinking with the devil. He refuses to pay for the devil's drinks, convinces the devil to turn into a coin, and basically won't turn him back until because he like puts him next to a silver cross in his pocket or whatever. And the different versions of the story vary. And basically won't turn the devil back or allow the devil to turn back until he promises not to come and take his soul for X amount of time. This proceeds 2 other times, because of course it's a fairy tale. There has to be the rule of threes. So after tricking the devil 3 times, the devil doesn't want to come take his soul anymore and has agreed not to. So whenever Stingy Jack finally passes away, he goes to heaven. God won't have him because he's a very unsavory character. And the devil won't let him into hell because he's tricked him too many times. So as he curses him to go walk the earth forever, he throws a burning coal from hell at him. And the burning coal, Stingy Jack picks it up to light his way in the darkness, but it burns his hand. So he picks a turnip and sticks the coal into the turnip and carves a face into the turnip to scare away the demons that the devil will send after him. So the original Jack's lantern was actually a turnip. These days we tend to use pumpkins because just for practical reasons they work better.
And if you happen to be listening to this right now and you've never seen this before, look up turnip jack-o'-lantern on the Google and thank me later, or possibly be angry with me.
And I will say that to spoil it for you, yeah, they are terrifying. A face carved into a turnip is scary on its own. I will say, of course, for obvious reasons, the fact that the pumpkins are bigger and hollow, they work better. But the turnip would still be really scary.
Yeah, it's like, because you have to carve with the grain of the vegetable. Is it a vegetable?
Yes.
You have to carve with the grain of the vegetable, which gives you a pretty creepy overall look to it. It looks like kind of uncanny valley.
And of course, with there being so much folklore surrounding Halloween, it's not really a surprise that Halloween is like intrinsic in media. And of course, this being a horror podcast, Halloween is always going to be tied to horror, and horror is going to be tied back to Halloween. Now, there's a few things that are like directly, like media, even before we get to certain movies that are just feature Halloween in them. And of course, we will absolutely get to the part where we talk about the movie Halloween and pausing and the different slashers and all that and how that all relates to Halloween. I feel there are just a few like really iconic, like they literally are about Halloween type movies. Like one of the ones I want to mention is The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh yeah, that's an absolute classic. Really, we're gonna get to Tim Burton in a moment on this subject, but continue.
Which, of course, as you said, and we're going to talk about Tim Burton and how he relates to Halloween in a very interesting way. But Nightmare Before Christmas, of course, has the unique thing of being both a Christmas movie and a Halloween movie. And I personally think it actually does a pretty good job of being both of those.
Oh yeah, and like, I mean, you have the lessons of Christmas, the lessons of Halloween, and really, it somehow manages to capture the atmosphere of both simultaneously. Like, really, honestly, there was a long time where, due to being contrarian, I didn't care for that film because, like, all the kind of poser goth kids, not really poser, that's not the right word, but there were some people in my school who were like really gatekeepy about being goth, and they all loved that movie, so I hated it for a while. But it grew back. It grew back on me. It grew back.
This was Hatter's time of giving into his inner hipster. And of course, Hatter, you know why the hipster burned his mouth when he drank the coffee, right? Because he drank it before it was cool. And that terrible joke aside, let's move on. And Nightmare Before Christmas, as we said, has both lessons. It has the fun and spookiness lesson about Halloween. It has the generosity and doing things for others and understanding the spirit of Christmas lesson. It just does a great job of being both. Now, is it, I don't want to say it's overrated. I would say it is highly rated to the point where we could argue about it being overrated, but it's so good, I think it may live up to its incredibly high rating.
Yeah, well, it was really something completely, I don't want to say new because stop motion had been done before, but like the amount of work that went into that film, it really does deserve every bit of credit it gets. Like, even if I wasn't refanned to it, like I hadn't become a fan again, I would still say that exactly that it just gets everything it deserves.
Now, when we're talking about something being overrated, and I know that you have some very strong opinions about that, when we're talking about Halloween classics and movies that people talk about rewatching every Halloween, we've got to bring up Hocus Pocus and whether or not it's overrated. So, Hatter, please give me your completely nuanced and I'm sure completely reasonable and calm opinion on Hocus Pocus.
It's the most overrated Halloween film I've ever seen. I would certainly not say it's a bad film. There's a lot that's good about it, but come on, it's not that good.
You see, and I'm somewhat in agreement with you on this. I want to say that I will even say I liked the movie. When I was a kid, I liked it, and even today, I can watch it and enjoy it, but the way people talk about Hocus Pocus as though it is one of the best movies ever, I'm not feeling it. It is not, to me, one of the best movies ever. It was nice. It was enjoyable. And I need to people to understand that I am currently being given the nastiest death glare from my wife that I assume is because she does think that Hocus Pocus is every bit as awesome as people say. I am getting a solemn nod, and that death glare, I can literally feel the hole being bored in the side of my head. So Sharon's vote is that it is not overrated, that it's amazing. So I just want people to know that that's where this movie rates.
Apparently death glares make a sound, because I can hear it. But,
Like
we
I
all
said,
have our own thoughts on things.
Oh, absolutely. I still think it's overrated. Now, does it have some parts that I enjoyed? Absolutely. As a kid, I was actually pretty traumatized by the scene where the cat gets run over by the bus. And even though he does pop back up, I mean, that was, for that kind of movie, was pretty graphic. I mean, no, it wasn't blood and guts, but you literally saw him get flattened by a bus. So that, and they showed the body with the tire tread through it. So, I mean, that was pretty hardcore for a kid's movie like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, like, movies like that, throughout history, there have been kids' movies that kind of push the envelope a bit. And it's always going to be scarier. Even when you're grown to full adulthood, it's always going to stick with you because it's something that you just weren't expecting. And even having seen it, you might still not expect it when you rewatch the film.
And I will say one other point that I will give to Hocus Pocus is Bette Midler was having a ball. You could just feel how much fun she had in that part and how much she enjoyed doing that movie. I really feel like she would have done that movie for free. She would have paid them to get to play a witch in that movie. And that came through and that showed. And that is one. And I honestly think that when people love this movie so much, it's somewhat skewed by the energy of the movie, by the chemistry of the cast, and just how much fun everybody was having. I honestly believe people had a blast filming this movie, and I think that's probably what skews it, in my opinion, to why people enjoy it more than maybe as a movie it deserves, just because it's fun and the people having it or filming it were having fun.
And I always respect that. Like, and I mean, Bette Midler, she always, like, I mean, a lot of her movies aren't really in my wheelhouse, but you can always see when you see her acting that she is almost always thoroughly enjoying what she's doing. And, that's something to be respected when you actually love the thing you're doing, because you don't see that a lot these days. A lot of people, it's just a job. It's not. If you're doing something in an artistic field like that, you should enjoy it. It shows.
100% agree. Now, I will mention Halloween Town in this as we kind of pass over. I know that my wife actually really enjoyed Halloween Town. I know it really wasn't you or I's big thing. I kind of almost consider that one more not exactly horror, kind of horror adjacent. It's very Disney, very not horror. I don't think we're really going to discuss it too much on this one unless you have any thoughts on it, Hatter. If anyone feels really strongly about Halloween Town, we can do like a mini episode and talk more about it. But I don't have too much to say about it other than we're discussing Halloween. I feel you have to admit that it exists, but it doesn't really have like a horror vibe to me.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it as a kid. I don't have a terrible lot to say because thinking back, if I watched it as an adult, I'd probably be like, eh. But as a kid, I do remember watching. I remember there were 3 of them. I remember nothing about the third one, like nothing whatsoever about the third one. But I do remember as a kid, I thought the second one was my favorite. But that's really all I have to say about it.
So if anyone's interested, let us know. You totally, if we get comments, you can force us to rewatch Halloween Town. I'll bring Sharon on. She has strong opinions, so we can do a whole episode on it if you want. So if that's something everyone's interested in, let us know.
So, but speaking of TV movies and TV specials, like all the old Nintendo, all the old Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon and Disney too, but everybody always had a Halloween special. And like I can think of so many just off the top of my head. I do want to talk about a few of my favorites, though. You remember Hey Arnold, don't you?
Absolutely.
Now, Hey Arnold had a Halloween special that I think was one of the best kids' Halloween specials, I should say, that just about ever existed. And basically what happened in it was they all decided they were going to play a prank on the adults. They were going to dress as aliens and kind of take over the radio and kind of create an alien invasion scenario. Does this sound familiar to you at all?
Yes, I do remember that one.
War of the Worlds is what they were doing, and they actually did have Maurice LaMarche playing an Orson Welles type radio guy, which is fantastic because Maurice LaMarche does a pretty much perfect impression of him. But yeah, that was a really good one. Invader Zim had a really good one. I tried to find it before the show so I could rewatch it, and I don't remember too much about it. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it to stream anywhere. But one of the things I really remember is during this Halloween special. Heck happened during the Invader Zim Halloween specials? Like this guy from the underworld who was trying to help Dib catch Zim. And the one thing I really remember is, and I saw the actor who plays Zim. Do you remember his name? Richard Horvitz. Richard Horvitz was in an interview, and when they were recording this for Nickelodeon, they didn't want Jonan Vasquez, the creator, and more on him later, to say underworld. They felt that was inappropriate, so they said he says he's from the world beneath the overworld, which is actually funnier, in my opinion, and in Richard Horvitz's opinion too. But that's another great one. Anything Jonan Vasquez feels Halloween, but we will get there in just a moment.
I will say one TV show that, and we're going to kind of tease the next section, which is going to be things that feel like Halloween that aren't. We're about to do a whole section on that, so stay tuned for that. But to me, a TV show that always felt Halloween-y was Scooby-Doo. But Scooby-Doo is relevant, and the reason they're in this section is because they did several different Halloween specials. Now, that's a little bit of a hat on a hat, because like I said, Scooby-Doo, any episode of Scooby-Doo could be considered a Halloween special. But they did some really good ones.
Yeah, generally speaking, when it comes to Halloween, yeah, Scooby-Doo, it's baby's first horror show. It really is.
Absolutely. And because it is so accessible to kids, it ends up having that Halloween vibe. And also because most of the episodes have someone wearing a mask or costume. So there you go. That's another element of Halloween in it. But I will say the one, and there's Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. There's a bunch of different ones, although I do think it's interesting that the movies, which were usually kind of their quote-unquote movies, they were special. Some of them were literal movies. But I will say one of the things I find interesting is they did tend to break their own rule in the movies, which is, because generally speaking in Scooby-Doo, the ghosts weren't real. It was always a fake out. But in a lot of the movies, they introduced real supernatural stuff. One movie that I think is very important historically, because it launched 1,000 goth boys out there looking for hot goth girls, was Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School.
I think you mean The Witch's Ghost.
Say again?
I think you mean The Witch's Ghost.
You're super quiet. I can't hear you at all.
That's weird.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Yeah, for some reason my volume turned down. But I think you mean, because I was thinking about the Ghoul School, but I think you're thinking about The Witch's Ghost.
Oh, Yeah, the Witch's Ghost, I could see could also launch a thousand guys seeking hot goth girlfriends, but for me, it was the Ghoul School, 100%.
Oh, I thought you were talking about that Hex Girls band thing. We'll get to that in a moment, though. Yeah, we'll talk about both. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I thought you were thinking of the wrong movie, but apparently you're not. Go right ahead.
No, the School for Ghouls with all the different monster girls. That was one of the ones that I really loved, and like I said, is one of the reasons why I did this. Well, hell, I married me a hot goth girl. So, like I said, launched 1,000 dudes looking for a goth girl.
Yeah, I remember that one pretty well, actually. It was one of my favorites when I was a kid. But I'll go ahead, expound on your point.
Oh no, that's it. That's the whole thing. That's the whole
I hear a lot of people talk about the Witch's Ghost because they had that band. I think it was the Hex Girls or whatever. And yeah, I never got it. I mean, the goth thing I get, but like it's pop music, and I have an inherent bias against it.
Which I can totally understand.
But ultimately, yeah, it's one of those things where, like, you know, your first experience with something as a kid is going to mold you as an adult, whether that's for the better or the worse. In this case, kind of neutrally, because, you know, what you like is what you like. But yeah, I think the Ghoul School, the Reluctant Werewolf, there were just so many great Scooby-Doo movies, and I think, as a matter of fact, as a kid, I like the Scooby-Doo movies better than any of the shows.
Oh, 100%. Generally speaking, I think they were pretty good. I also liked Zombie Island. I was a big fan of that one.
Zombie Island was just about a masterpiece. Oh, but on that note, there was a lot of stuff like we said, you know, Scooby-Doo feels like Halloween, even though it isn't really all the time. But there's a lot of shows like that where it's like you tend to associate it with Halloween, and it feels like Halloween. And I think, side note, a lot of kids shows, new seasons would start in the fall, so, you know, Halloween was typically heavily involved. But yeah, we're going to go over actually a good few of the ones that weren't really Halloween shows or Halloween specials, but we either associate it with Halloween or it just feels like it has the vibe.
And that's something I want to talk about, is that I want to talk about what it means to have a Halloween vibe when you're not Halloween. Because there are certain criteria. Because I do feel like this is weirdly something we can actually elucidate here. This is something we can put a label on. Because while, don't get me wrong, everything's subjective, I do think that there are certain things that we can look for in a media that will tell us whether it, quote unquote, feels like Halloween. Now, some of it is going to be straight up fall vibes. Anything that happens in the fall and has that fall color palette, anything in your blacks and oranges and greens and purples, is going to definitely feel that way. But I also would say it has to have horror. Of course, there has to be an element of horror. If it's not at least a little bit scary, a little bit themed along that, it's not going to feel like Halloween. But also there has to be a level of humor, a level of silliness, a level of levity, because otherwise then it's just horror and doesn't necessarily have a real Halloween vibe.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between, you know, the Halloweenish horror and just standard horror, because it's almost like the Halloween horror, like you said, it's got the levity and stuff. I think the best word for it is a certain F word that happens to be one of our favorites.
And what word is that?
Fun.
Absolutely. I will say fun horror. That's got to be part of it in order to be Halloween.
Yeah, and I guess fun is the best word I've got for it. There are other things like it's not the dark, gritty, often unpleasant conceptual horror. It can be darker. It's not always comedic, but it's always, I guess, I don't want to say good-natured. What's the word I'm looking for?
Maybe lighter might be another way of saying it. Lighter.
That's certainly one way to put it, but like there's an element of wow. Give me a sec.
Well, I think you may have nailed it with fun. I think that may be the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to come up with a better word when I don't really need to. I just had a memory of a children's horror thing that I watched as a kid, or a children's Halloween special that I watched as a kid. And this is directly Halloween related, and I know we moved on, but I just remembered it while we were talking, so I want to talk about it for a second.
Absolutely.
Do you remember a TV special that was CG animated in the most horrific way called The Scary Godmother?
Not at all.
I'm sure somebody's memory was just jogged. It's basically about this girl, and her big brother scares her a lot, and she's afraid of Halloween, and he's supposed to take her trick-or-treating, but, you know, he's going to scare her. And she goes into a haunted house and meets all these monsters, like there's a skeleton, a werewolf, and, of course, the scary godmother. And I don't remember a terrible lot about it other than really bad CGI animation. But my God, it just came to my mind when you were talking about that stuff. And it does go to a dark place because somehow it got a sequel. And like they get revenge on the big brother by scaring him. And he becomes like this like basket case where he doesn't want to leave the house. And I'm like, wow, that went to a dark place for a kids movie.
Well, and as we talked about, it's weird when kids' movies do that. And sometimes incredibly effective when they just unexpectedly go there.
I think I got to look this movie up because like that was just a sudden memory jog.
Now, I will say one more thing and a couple more things, I guess, that kind of will make something feel very Halloween-y is a certain aesthetic, and not just the color palette, but is going to be like the wonky angles, the weird setting, the gothic setting. Anything very gothic-y is often going to give elements of Halloween. And one of the things, if I were to try to describe what something that feels like Halloween but isn't Halloween, and sum it up for someone, I would just say Tim Burton. Picture anything by Tim Burton, and that's going to feel like Halloween, even if it has nothing to do with Halloween.
Yeah, I agree. Like Joan, and I mentioned earlier we're going to talk more about Jonan Vasquez, but he kind of has that vibe to what he does. The like you said, the odd angles, the overall just shape and the shape language of it speaks to that overall vibe.
And anyone who might not be familiar with Jonan Vasquez, that's, of course, Invader Zim, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, other comics like that. Fantastic artist, one of the greats.
And if you've only seen Invader Zim and you're planning on reading Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and you think, oh, I could handle Invader Zim, I could handle this. Yeah, it's a lot worse than Invader Zim. Just be ready because it's gory, it's messy, it's dark, it's existential. And I mean, even beyond the gore and the disturbing sequences, it asks some pretty difficult existential questions. So just a warning if you want to check it out. Highly recommended, but just understand that before you move into it.
Absolutely. Now, I will say, along the Tim Burton thing, getting into some different things that definitely feel Halloween that aren't Halloween. And I want to pick a few that I think, to me, are 1,000,000% feel very Halloween, but people won't think of immediately. And I'm going to pick one of the Tim Burton things, and that's the Tim Burton Batman movie. If you think about it, one, it has the Tim Burton look, so it looks incredibly Halloween. Hell, if you told me it was supposed to take place during Halloween, I would believe you. And even when you think about Batman as a media, it's all about, it's slightly horror themed to begin with. Everyone's wearing costumes. Batman has a tiny bit of Halloween in it to begin with. Slap some Burton on that, and I definitely feel like Tim Burton's Batman is absolutely Halloween vibed, if it's not Halloween.
Generally speaking, Batman is pretty Halloween. I mean, you have villains like the Scarecrow, and he's a bat, first of all. Well, he's not a bat, but he thinks he is. And, I'm sorry. I think what you were about to say is like the art style fits it, and it really does, especially with certain comics that we'll get to a bit later.
That's completely accurate, but that's not what I was about to say, because what I was about to say is his arch nemesis is literally a clown.
That's true, which is clowns are Halloween. Clowns are pretty Halloween.
Which is because a lot of people have chlorophobia. A lot of people are afraid of clowns, which I do find very interesting. And I think that goes back to people forcing their young kids to interact with clowns. And so it scared them, and so they all developed clown phobias. I don't really have that myself, but I do find it really interesting. And I agree, at this point, clowns themselves are a little bit Halloween themed.
I like clowns. Generally speaking, the scary ones, the funny ones, I just like clowns.
I actually went to high school with a guy who became a professional clown. And even when I was in high school, he was working as a professional clown at birthday parties and things. And his name was Fiddlewood the Clown.
That's fantastic. My brother always said that his clown name would be Butt Slap the Clown.
Okay, that would absolutely work, but you just have to play the right parties. Of course, you couldn't be a children's birthday party clown with that name. But I also do remember at Creepy Hollow, we had a very famous clown there called Scabs the Clown.
What gave him that nickname? I pray tell.
That would be the makeup that made him look diseased, and lots of STD jokes. Lots of STD jokes.
That's the best thing I've ever heard. Now, when it comes to clowns for me, I've never had an issue with clowns. Even as a kid, I didn't have an issue with clowns, and probably because I watched things like Batman and stuff, and I just kind of grew up with it. my mom never had a clown for my birthday party. It's just not something I ever asked for as a kid. So, I just don't think I ever had those interactions.
So Batman, definitely, any Batman has an element of horror. And I know there were some of the comics you specifically wanted to mention.
Specifically, there's two. There's one that is directly a Halloween comic. It's called Batman The Long Halloween, if that's not obvious enough. Main character's the Joker, and like all this creepy stuff is happening. I meant to reread it before the podcast, but it's kind of a busy work week. But I'm sure a lot of people have read it. And it was made into a TV movie, or, well, not a TV movie, a streaming movie. And if it's something you want to watch, I think it's on Netflix. It's definitely worth watching. It's not as great as the comic was, and it never is. But, like, my favorite line in the whole, I don't remember if it was actually in the comic. I do remember them saying it in the movie. And this is, like, a little bit, I don't want to say random. It is related, but, I do want to bring it up. There's a line the Joker says, because he's jealous of whatever villain is menacing Batman. He's his number one villain, and he basically, he didn't want to be number two to another guy, so he says, as the Corn Colonel said, I won't be number two. And it's one of my favorite Joker lines ever. It is a little silly for his character, but I loved it.
That's actually one of the things I love about the Joker is he can be written and played in such a wide variety. So we sometimes get a very serious Joker, and sometimes we get a very silly Joker. And I feel like no matter which way he's played, it still feels like the Joker. And I love that range.
Oh yeah, and another fun fact, he was played by, you know who usually plays the Joker, right? I don't have to tell you.
Of course.
Mark Hamill, for those of you who don't know, but in that, he was played by Troy Baker, who's typically a video game actor. He's not in a lot of animation, but he played him in Batman Arkham Origins, and he did it so well, when Mark Hamill couldn't do it, they called him, and I just always thought that was really cool.
Absolutely.
But, the other one I wanted to mention, this one definitely has a Halloween vibe. It's got and it's not, there are rare instances where dark and not in some way with no levity can still be Halloween. And it just really depends on style and what you're going for. But there's another Batman novel called Arkham, A Serious House on Serious Earth. And I have talked to you about this. You know what this is, right?
Absolutely.
But the short version of it is Batman is in Arkham Asylum, which, big surprise. He gets locked in there with the villains. And he starts to see, like, their side of things, where they're in there, and, like, the things they go through and the things that their mental illnesses do to them. And it's it's dark and it's real and it's really gritty. And it's all done in this watercolor style. So that just really adds a level of surrealness to it. So yeah, those are two for your spooky season. Check out The Long Halloween for something a little sillier, dark, but more on the Halloween side. And if you want something really just dark and straight up unpleasant at times, Serious House on Serious Earth is your way to go.
Now, I want to take a step back to where we were talking about Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and Jonah Vasquez, because there is another artist named Ted Nhai. And he has done a lot of comics that, to me, feel very similar to Vasquez, in that if you told me they were done by the same guy, I would believe you. Now, they tend to be lighter, and they tend to be more, like, kid-appropriate. But specifically, the one I'm talking about today that has to do with Halloween is the Courtney Crumrin books. Like, the first one is called Courtney Crumrin and the Night Things. There's Courtney Crumrin and the Autumn Prince. There's a bunch of them. And they're very, very good. They are comics, of course. And they have that same very Halloween-y vibe. And they're about this young girl who goes to live with her uncle and discovers monsters and goblins and all sorts of creatures. It's both, in some ways, more child-appropriate, but it's also very dark, very scary. Definitely has a certain amount of death, although not a lot of gore. If you haven't ever read Courtney Crumrin and the Night Things, the comic, highly recommend it.
Yeah, I looked it up when you mentioned it. I do see the aesthetic similarities to stuff like... And yeah, definitely, I looked a little bit into it. Definitely a lot less gritty and gory than Jonah Vasquez, because he just... I think he was trying to gross people out sometimes, which I wouldn't put it past him. But yeah, that's something if you want something that's not quite as gross.
If you want the same vibe, but not quite as hardcore, I would recommend Courtney Crumrin. If you want something that's just really going to push your limits, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. And that's what and to be fair, that is what he was trying to do. It's also comic kind of making fun of the same people who read it. So it's made to kind of tap in to that edgelord high school goth kid that I was when I read it. So it's in a way poking fun at them too. Good-naturedly, because he himself was a high school edgy goth kid.
Yeah, and on a similar note, I remember I read those comics when I was in high school. I didn't remember them too well, but like I didn't remember it because I reread them not long ago, and I didn't remember them being quite that bad. I'm like looking back to when I was in high school, thinking, I really read this?
Weirdly, I remember them being that bad, went back and reread them, and they were that bad. So they were exactly how I remembered them.
Yeah, but I read a lot of things in high school, and just another thing that feels Halloween but isn't. And I'm not sure when we plan to bring this up, but we're going to do kind of a little survey. For me, Stephen King's It feels extremely Halloween for quite a few reasons. One, that me and my grandma used to watch it together every year around Halloween. Two, that inspired me to read the book around Halloween, which at the age of 15, I had no business reading, which, I mean, I think most people have no business reading that book ever, but we won't get into why. But yeah, so I'm asking people out there, did you watch Stephen King's It, the movie, with your grandma at some point? Is this like something that is happening in the world?
Yes, because this is something that Hatter and I were discussing. Because I first watched Stephen King's It, the miniseries at the time, with my grandmother. She was watching it, and I started watching it with her. So, are there grandmothers out there introducing people to Stephen King's It? Is that a thing? We need to know. So, if you also watch Stephen King's It with your grandmother, we need you to let us know. Is this just us, or is this a trend?
It certainly meets my approval, too. It's one of the few really good trends I've seen.
Absolutely. Now, you brought up the thing of does Stephen King feel Halloween? Does it have a Halloween vibe? And my answer is some Stephen King sometime. Like I will say it probably is one of the more Halloween feeling ones. I will also say, now it's not a movie, it's a book, but I will say Bag of Bones, which is a haunted house story of his, has
Oh, yeah.
at times a very Halloween vibe, although not consistent.
I'd say a lot of his cheesier movies have it because cheesy and Halloween go together really well. But Stephen King, to me, and this is where I'm going to disagree. To me, Stephen King feels Halloween because when I was in high school, when I was really into reading, it was always in the fall when school had just started. When summer came, I was playing video games. I was slamming video games. But yeah, so Stephen King to me, I feel has a connection to Halloween.
Well, and that's awesome. And I love how Halloween is like that for people. It's more about what your experience was and what you did during that time and your personal traditions, your personal habits, and just what Halloween became for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all have our own. Like we already talked about our own Halloween kind of habits. But I'm sorry, where were we? I went off on a tangent there, as I am watching.
Well, actually, speaking of the Halloween traditions and habits, I'll mention one talking about another TV series that feels like Halloween but isn't, but just goes to show how that part of thing is part of my life, even when it's not Halloween. Going to haunted houses even when it's not Halloween, that kind of thing. And one of which is, first of all, I will say that I think that Twilight Zone has a little bit of a Halloween vibe to me. It's definitely not Halloween, although I think there are one or two that maybe touch on Halloween. But generally speaking, it's not Halloween, but it's just got that vibe, partially because it's horror and it's not always really dark, and a lot of it has a humorous edge. I think that's why it has a little bit of that vibe to me. And Sharon and I developed a habit because back in the day, especially on, I want to say it was Sci-Fi Channel, every New Year's Eve, they played a Twilight Zone marathon. So we got into watching the Twilight Zone marathon on New Year's Eve. Well, after they quit doing that, we started streaming our own Twilight Zone marathon every New Year's Eve, which for me is kind of bringing some Halloween vibes into the new year.
Yeah, I agree. Like, to me, and again, it's one of those things where I can't thoroughly explain it, but I feel the Twilight Zone has a Halloween vibe. I can't tell you any of the reasons that we have named so far that point to why it is, but I feel it. Atmosphere-wise, it feels Halloween to me.
Absolutely. Now, and a lot of children's horror just tends to have that vibe because it tends to meet a lot of the criteria we've talked about. So, of course, two things we've got to talk about if we're going to talk about children's horror that really does fit the Halloween vibe. We got to talk about Goosebumps, and we got to talk about Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh yeah, when I was a kid, the only thing I would read was Goosebumps because it was the only thing that interested me. And yeah, and like my teachers would always say, all you're reading is Goosebumps books, and later on it was all you're reading is Stephen King books, and I'm like, that's what I like. But yeah, there's quite a few of them that I can remember that really got me as a kid and started pulling me into horror.
Yeah, and I will say that I think Goosebumps was entry level horror for a whole lot of people, and I do love that. I am so glad that was there for people. You know, it's funny, you mentioned only reading Goosebumps and then only reading Stephen King. I had a tendency to do that when I was a kid too. I would pick an author, read everything he ever wrote, then move on to another author. That Stephen King was one of those for me at one point, although the one before that was not horror, and it was a guy named Piers Anthony, which was fantasy. I will say Piers Anthony definitely had some questionable stuff in some of his fantasy novels. I will say that if that one scene from Stephen King's It bothers you, as it probably should bother anyone, you definitely should never read anything by Piers Anthony. That was highly sus, highly sus. I'm still suspect of this dude. So there's some stuff in his books that I'm like, that was in a book, and some of this was at least partially aimed at children. I mean, he wasn't children's fantasy, but they were, they were generally considered to be the type of fantasy that a teenager would totally be acceptable for them to read. And there was some highly sus shit in there. I'm still not sure about Piers Anthony.
Is he still around?
Last I checked, I didn't ever hear that he died. I may have to Google that now. I'm going to do that later. I'm not going to do it right now. But yeah, he's got some weird stuff in there. There's definitely some stuff that made me go, really, we're doing this. This is okay. But it was really good fantasy. I really enjoyed it, especially as a teenager. But talking about Stephen King was one of the ones that I read literally everything Stephen King ever wrote at the time. So I definitely get that vibe. And I never got huge into reading the Goosebumps stories, but I really liked them. I read a few of them, especially after I was older. And I really liked the TV series that was big. I really enjoyed the TV series.
It was a surprise for me when I read the book because it was so much darker, so much just really creepy, scary stuff. And it was a big shocker for me how different it was from the movie. And when I did read it, I realized, they really should not have tried to make a TV series or a movie without being willing to do an entire season or several hours of content, because that book is so dense despite its size.
Oh, absolutely. And now, of course, we also have to talk about Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I loved Are You Afraid of the Dark? And to me, Are You Afraid of the Dark, which, of course, for anyone who's unfamiliar with, was a series of episodes. And each time this group of kids called the Midnight Society would tell scary stories around a campfire. And then, we would, of course, see the entire thing play out. It was kind of an anthology kind of thing. Very good children's horror. Some were scary, some weren't. They ran the whole gamut. There's actually a woman on TikTok who does an entire series called Was Are You Afraid of the Dark Really Scary, or Were We Just Five? Where she actually breaks down each episode and gives an opinion on whether it was scary or not. Excellent series. I highly recommend checking out.
How much of it actually ends up being scary?
Most of it she rates pretty low on the scary vibe, but more than you would think, get at least a decent-ish rating, at least for general creepiness. Now, I will say that Are You Afraid of the Dark, for me, feels very Halloween, if nothing else than the framing device of the kids telling stories around a dark campfire feels very fall, very autumn, so has a little bit of a Halloween vibe to me.
Oh, absolutely. I don't remember too much about it, but I remember a few episodes. I don't know if this was Goosebumps or not, but there was like a ghost in the pool, and like it was trying to drown them, and it was really scary. Like it didn't have any skin or anything.
Yes, that was Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the episode or anything, but I do remember seeing it as a kid and peeing myself a little bit.
Yeah, that actually was a really well-designed monster. I actually liked that one.
And that's another thing. When you do those practical effects, it doesn't matter how old it is. They're going to look good because they're uncanny.
Absolutely.
So those are all just a bunch of properties that they feel like Halloween. They feel like something you would see around Halloween, but don't directly relate to Halloween. Of course, we need to talk about stuff that actually is Halloween stuff because it is a Halloween special. We have a bit of a list there. Why don't you get us started, Gray?
Well, first and foremost, and the main one that we're going to be talking about here is Halloween, the Halloween franchise, and which the Halloween franchise is a horror icon for a reason. Now, it's had its ups and downs throughout the whole franchise. The original movie, like a lot of the horror icons, the original movie holds up pretty good, but it definitely feels dated. You can, in the same way that Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th, the original movie holds up surprisingly well, I feel, But like I said, you're not going to accidentally think this is a modern horror movie. It feels like a very dated slasher.
Yeah, and like Halloween got strange, and we do have to talk about this one a bit because it is directly Halloween related. You remember Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, right?
Absolutely.
So for the people who don't know, Halloween the series almost went in a totally different direction. They almost got rid of Michael Myers in general. The plan was to make it an anthology series where it was always about something different, but people got so upset about Michael not being in the movie, they decided to bring him back instead. I'm a little disappointed, honestly. I would have wanted to see. I would love to have seen how that anthology series went. But in and of itself, Halloween 3 was a good film. I don't care what anybody says.
Well, and I think part of the reason why it wasn't successful, because they had this idea that each of the movies in the Halloween franchise were going to be a different story. Well, in the first installment, which was Halloween, which is the Michael Myers one that we know and love, they decided to make it 2 parts. And so I think by doing a 2-parter and then trying to have the third one be unrelated to the other 2, it made it confusing. I think if they had gone ahead and made Halloween 1 have Michael Myers in it, and then Halloween 2 had been what we got as Halloween 3, if Halloween 2 had been Season of the Witch, I think we might could have got away with it. But unfortunately, because they did a 2-part Michael Myers one, people just assumed that the entire series was going to be about Michael Myers.
Yeah, that seems about right. Now, for me, like I said, I would love to have seen that anthology series happen. But, we got... you can tell they really did not know what they were going to do with that, because you could see it goes in about 3 different directions with Michael Myers, because they did not know what they wanted to do with the character. They bring him back in 4, and in that timeline, what was this? Laurie's dead. In that timeline, Laurie is dead, so they have to bring someone else in, so they bring the niece in. Then they go into this stuff about a cult. Then they decide to cancel all that stuff, and after 2, they say Laurie got her name changed and stuff. We got H2O, which was the perfect ending to that series, by the way, and they ruined it with Resurrection. And then, after they ruined it with Resurrection, they decided to try and fix it again with the trilogy that started in 2018, which, in my opinion, is the best timeline so far. And I really do think that they fixed it with that. I would not give any notes about it, except that Halloween Kills was kind of uneventful. I mean, it wasn't uneventful, but it could have been part of the third movie.
Absolutely. And it is just wild how many timelines and different retcons and just the journey that the Halloween franchise goes on. Now, one thing I am going to bring up that I want everyone to note, by the way, that when Hatter was talking about all the different movies in this franchise, he left out the Rob Zombie movies. That's not because he forgot to, it's because he's trying to blot them out of his memory.
There were no Rob Zombie movies.
There were no Rob Zombie movies. There are only 4 Lights, and there is no War in Ba Sing Se.
I will say this. The first Rob Zombie movie, it was good. But the second movie, it kind of killed it. I liked the first one. The second movie just makes me not want to acknowledge either one, though.
Well, I actually liked the first movie. Of course, I didn't particularly care for the last movie. I thought it was confused and didn't make a lot of sense, but there's actually a reason for that. I can explain that. Although, before I go into that, I want to mention the fact that when I was talking about this movie, I heard someone describe the genre that this movie is in, and that specifically Rob Zombie tends to make movies in, as hellbilly. Like hillbilly, but hellbilly. Yep. And that's absolutely accurate. I could not think of a better word for this genre.
That is so accurate that you don't even have to. If you didn't tell me that if we weren't talking about Halloween, and you said hellbilly, I would have immediately said, yeah, Rob Zombie.
Yeah, you would have known exactly what I meant. I think that's fantastic. That's just a great genre name. But the reason the second movie sucks so bad is because they had originally told Rob Zombie, of course, they let him make the first movie. Then they said, hey, we're going to have you make the second movie. He's like, okay, cool. I'd love to make the second movie. Then they told him, yeah, we're not even going to do the second movie. We're not going to let you make the second movie. He's like, well, shit. So he went off and did other things, wasn't even worried about it, didn't bother to write a second movie. And then they came to him with, I forget what, it was some ridiculously short timeline, a couple months, whatever, and said, oh, by the way, we're going to let you do the second movie and you start now. And he was like, but I don't have a plan. They said, come up with one. You're doing it unless you don't want to do it. Okay, no, I'll do it. And so I swear to God, this script for this movie was like what happens when you tell a 5-year-old to tell you a story, and it's like, and then I saw my wife on a horse, and it was a big horse, and yeah, Also, by the way, he should not be allowed to put Sherry Moon Zombie in things, his wife. Don't get me wrong, and it's not because I don't love her. She's a fantastic actress. I adore Sherry Moon Zombie. But he just puts her in shit for no reason and doesn't know what to do with her. He just likes putting his wife in shit. And I feel like it's usually like a massive disservice to her because she's an amazing actress in the whole House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, that whole trilogy. She was stellar.
Absolutely. And you know what? I will say this. He doesn't always know what to do when he puts his wife in a movie. But at the very least, his wife is a good actor and he is a good writer. Paul W.S. Anderson, however, puts his wife in everything. She sucks, he sucks, and I will never forgive him for what he did to several Capcom properties. And I will never talk about Paul W.S. Anderson again. Yep. That's all I have to say about it.
We will now Voldemort him. He will be the he who shall not be named.
Not say the name Paul W.S. Anderson in my presence. But yeah, no, his movies, even when they're bad, they're pretty good. That's what I would have to say about those.
Now, on Halloween itself, like I said, I actually liked Rob Zombie's take, his first one, especially having it kind of the. I liked us getting to see the beginning of the story and getting to learn a little bit more about Michael Myers as a kid. A lot of people didn't. They liked him to be more serious. I actually enjoyed that part.
Well, I like that we saw, because we knew, like, he was just in the original movie. Michael was just an evil kid, and that, like when I was a kid, it was like, okay, whatever. But as an adult, it doesn't sit right with me. There's got to be something that makes you that way. You're not just soulless and evil. And Rob Zombie made an attempt to give us the history of this kid and why he was like that. So that was something I enjoyed.
I will also say the Rob Zombie movie had my favorite Loomis in it. That he is my favorite Loomis.
Malcolm McDowell.
Absolutely.
Like Malcolm McDowell can do no wrong.
He's been good in everything I've ever seen him in.
Clockwork Orange.
Yep.
I think at one point he was on South Park narrating their episode where they did kind of a loose parody of Great Expectations by Charles Dickens.
Yeah.
And he just said, "I am a British man." That's how he introduced himself. But yeah, no, great films. One great film, one not so great, and the second one kind of ruined the first one for me. That's really all I have to say about that.
Now, circling back to the other Halloween films, I will say, that they get, in my opinion, I think some kind of unfair hate sometimes. One of the things, of course, is the teleporting Michael Myers, and that is kind of fair, because I don't think they always put a lot of thought into their blocking, so that sometimes it does seem like he came out of nowhere when you could just tell they pictured the scene differently in their heads. Now, one thing I say... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just agreeing. Yep, I agree.
One thing I will say that they get hate for that I don't think they should is the fact that when Michael Myers escapes the mental institution, he drives away. And a lot of people going, gee, where did he learn to drive a car in the mental institution? And I'm like, first of all, the movie addresses that itself, because Loomis is yelling at them at another point when they're talking about how far away he could be. I talk about, well, he could be this far away if he drives. It's like, oh, he doesn't know how to drive. And Loomis specifically points out to them, he drove away last night in a car he stole. Well, how does he even know how to drive? And Loomis saying, I don't know, maybe someone gave him lessons, but he can drive. Just pointing out that, yes, he can. My personal theory on that, by the way, is that as long as a car is not a standard, as long as it has automatic transmission, which I know that probably a lot of our people who may be younger than us and not millennials may not even know what a manual transmission is, but as long as it's an automatic, it is not that hard to figure out how to drive a car. It's pretty self-explanatory.
And I mean, I was going to say you could have looked it up on the internet, but but there was a kid, well, put it this way, there was a kid years and years ago who decided he wanted to go to McDonald's. So he looked up on YouTube how to drive a car and and this kid's like 12, mind you, drove his parents' car to McDonald's to get food. And I mean, I know there's no YouTube in the Halloween universe because it's a past time. But if a kid, even with a YouTube video, could figure out how to drive a car, I'm pretty sure a grown man could figure it out.
Absolutely. So I've always thought that was one of those weird, where everyone mentioned that it's a giant plot hole. And I'm like, I personally did not need a scene explaining why Michael Myers could drive a car. That just never felt like something I needed in my life.
And I got to tell you, honestly, it sounds pretty nitpicky because, I mean, it's not the part, the thing that you have to worry about isn't driving the car. It's driving the car safely, and I don't think he's really worried about that.
Absolutely. To me, the biggest, if you want to call it a plot hole, which I do not consider a plot hole, it's just he got lucky. The biggest thing he had to get lucky in was to not encounter a police officer who is going to note the fact that he is almost definitely driving erratically, but it's fairly easy to drive from point A to point B without ever encountering a police officer. So it's not that wild to assume that he was able to do that.
Well, especially in a small town like Haddonfield.
Well, I know I can drive back and forth in the small towns that I live around and go all day without encountering a cop. So, I mean, it's not that wild. Now, I also would totally have believed it if they had written a scene where he did encounter a cop, but the fact that he didn't, I mean, it's not out there to me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it is what it is. Haddonfield's a small town, and like, I mean, even if a cop did see him driving erratically, he might a lot of people in those towns get away with driving drunk and stuff. So he probably had a few too many, especially in the 70s. Like, because in the original movie, he drove away in a car too. So that was something people questioned in the original movie too, not just the remake. So again, it's a different time.
Well, and I was actually referencing the original, so yeah.
Oh yeah. He drove away last night. But yeah, anyway, we've been on Halloween for a while. What else do we have on the list?
So moving along, a couple that I'm just sort of giving mentions to, which is Trick or Treat, which, don't get me wrong, is absolutely a horror Halloween, really good anthology. I don't have a ton to say about it. Oh, it's not exactly an anthology. It's the one famous with the kid with the bag head mask. It's good. It's solid. I don't have any strong memories about it. If anyone would like a long deep dive on that one specifically, let us know. I will also give an honorable mention to Pumpkinhead, because while I don't remember that one being especially Halloween central to the plot, it was definitely interesting in the fact that it had the whole jack-o'-lantern thing, which inherently ties it to Halloween.
And I'm going to tell you this, too. I rewatched those movies today. I did find time to watch those. A lot of it takes place in rural towns where there's a lot of farmland and stuff like that. And it is in the autumn. So, small towns, autumn, revenge. This is all Halloween. And I will say this, too. The first two movies are phenomenal. I could not find the third one anywhere. The fourth one was available. And for God's sake, let's just pretend that never happened.
And I will say that the makeup and effects on the original Pumpkinhead are iconic, and I remember that from my childhood. I don't remember the movie hardly at all from when I was a kid, but I remember the makeup.
It's on Tubi if you want to watch it. That's free.
I'm definitely going to have to do a rewatch.
But yeah, no, to me, another thing, just in a similar idea, when I play World of Warcraft, there's an area called Westfall that I always go through because it's farmland. Everything is kind of golden yellow and orange and brown, and it feels really harvesty and really Halloween-y, even though, again, there's absolutely nothing in Westfall that is about Halloween. But, it is what it is. I do it every time I play World of Warcraft because I just want to feel like it's fall.
And I will say that World of Warcraft does do its own Halloween specials every year, and their Headless Horseman extravaganza there is actually a super fun questline.
Oh yeah, they do what they call Hallows End. You can unlock skins and stuff. They love their holidays, and they love Halloween, and everyone should, because Halloween is great.
Now, one thing I will say, this is segueing and bridging between talking about Halloween, which is one of the original slashers. We can have a big debate about what the original slasher is, but it's one of the original slashers. And things that feel like Halloween but aren't, because I would say that in a way, all slashers make me think of Halloween.
Yeah, it's tradition. They always have the marathons on TV and stuff. So yeah, definitely, for sure.
I mean, when you watch Freddy, I don't know how you can watch Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th and not think of Halloween a little bit. If nothing else, then they are probably two of the most iconic Halloween costumes ever. I mean, you basically can't see a bunch of people doing Halloween costumes without seeing someone with a ski mask on.
Oh yeah, and I was Jason a couple of years as a kid because I always thought he was cool. He's a Deadite. Fun fact.
Canonically. Actually, that is accurate. Canonically.
Yep.
There was originally going to be a Freddy, Jason, Ash from the Evil Dead crossover, but they didn't want Ash to kill the two villains, and then so just decided not to make it at all. But originally that was going to happen.
And he would have. He's Ash. Of course he would have.
Absolutely. Now, I will say, out of the classic horror movies that or more in the slasher thing. This is a little bit segueing back to things that feel like horror, but you know, we can do that. We can do whatever we want. And one of the ones that I think has such a Halloween feel, even though it is definitely not, is Leprechaun with its crazy, silly ass vibes and surprisingly good gore occasionally.
Oh yeah, Leprechaun. It might just be that we watch them around Halloween, but it's really more the silly, fun, upbeat monster instead of like the dark stuff. It's what we've been saying. It fits the vibe.
Absolutely. And I love the Leprechaun movies. Some are better than others. Weirdly, Leprechaun in the Hood, which feels like it should be bad, is actually pretty decent.
Yeah, decent enough that they made two of them.
Yeah, and that's wild. But it was fun. It was enjoyable. So I've always been a fan of the Leprechaun movies, and it's not just because I look like a leprechaun. Anyone who sees me, I occasionally get told that I look Amish and like a leprechaun, so I just roll with it.
I can see it. What's the guy's name? Warwick Davis. He hasn't been in the last 2 or 3 Leprechaun movies, sadly, but he really had fun with that role. You could tell that Warwick Davis was just like Bette Midler. He was having a great time with it, and that made it fun.
Absolutely. The energy, the chemistry, that's always going to make a better movie.
But yeah, Leprechaun. What else have we got?
Well, actually, unless you have any other thoughts, I'm going to move to the ones that are definitely not horror, or not, excuse me, are not Halloween.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that about covers what we wanted to say with that.
Perfect. So, in the same vein of where we've talked about a lot of horror that just feels very Halloween, I do want to mention that not all horror feels like Halloween. There are certain classifications of horror that to me just don't feel Halloween at all. First and foremost is going to be anything that feels like it belongs in a different season. So, I know you mentioned like Wrong Turn, Last House on the Left, anything that feels very summery definitely to me doesn't feel very Halloween. Also things like Sleepaway Camp.
Yeah, there's such a thing as summer horror, and that's all it, I would say.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's an episode we do later.
Oh, yes, summer horror. That would be a great episode. And I will say that I do feel like Friday the 13th is a weird bridge thing because it still feels a little Halloween to me, even though technically it's summer horror. So that one's a weird middle-y ground for me, but it still, to me, falls more in having the Halloween vibes.
I think anything with a slasher has the vibe.
Now, I will say that some other things that to me definitely will never feel Halloween-y is anything that's like psychological horror. So Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon, that kind of stuff, that never really to me does not give me a Halloween vibe.
Oh yeah, and Hellraiser too. Hellraiser it's not even summer horror. That's anytime horror. But cold months especially.
Oh, 100% agree. Anything that feels like artsy horror, or which Hellraiser is like artsy horror for people who don't like artsy horror. It has artsy elements without being overly artsy, and that definitely does not feel like Cell is another movie that would be, now that's also psychological, but I feel it's also very artsy, and is definitely very not Halloween.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one, actually.
Oh my god, Cell is a classic. You need to watch it, and we need to do an episode. Guys, let us know if you want an episode on Cell. If you're unfamiliar with Cell, it's basically where a woman develops this technology where she can go into people's dreams and generally uses this to help people psychologically, but she has to use it to go into the mind of a serial killer in order to find out where his victims are and that kind of thing. And it's just so good because it's all her exploring the twisted mind of this serial killer, and it's very artsy, very psychedelic, very surreal, very good.
Cell, yeah, I will watch that and we can talk about it. But yeah, anything psychological or artsy, yeah, definitely doesn't fall into the Halloween category.
Absolutely. Now, I want us to kind of segue into just various other media and Halloween vibed horror elements in just other media.
Yeah, and I think that I just want to talk about video games first because it's kind of surprisingly a small list. One example I have is Jersey Devil. It's got the colors, the vibe, the art style. Jersey Devil is a Halloween game. It was on the PS1. I don't remember. Have you played it?
No, I've never played that one.
Okay, so it's definitely one to check out. That was going to be the only one, as you recall, but I did come up with another one while we were writing this. Do you remember Grim Fandango?
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, you just unlocked a memory as soon as you said that, but yes, I hadn't thought of that. Grim Fandango as Halloween-y, but also very Day of the Dead themed. Oh my God, yes, Grim Fandango is a great example of a Halloween game.
And I gotta replay it because it's been years since I've played that, and I own a copy on the PS5. They did a remaster.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm going to have to get it too. That I'd forgotten about that game. So we may have to play that game and then do a whole episode on it. And just so guys, so you know, we're actually planning on doing, of course, long form videos like this one where we spend a long time talking about a broad subject, but we're also going to be doing some where we're doing them shorter and more specific topics like single issue, single topic, single game, single movie, whatever. So we're definitely going to be doing a wide variety. So if there's anything you would like to see us do, like just a good, concise review, discussion, whatever of, let us know. We would love to check some stuff out for you.
I think we're also probably going to do some horror games, some playthroughs and stuff, but that's a discussion for another time, for another day.
Absolutely. One very old game, this is in the old PC days, was Hugo's House of Horrors, which was what would now be considered kind of a point and click style game that was about a character walking through a haunted house. It was text based. It was interesting for the time. It was, like I said, very haunted house themed, lots of ghosts and bats and jack-o'-lanterns. So tons of that vibe. So definitely in and of itself, very early, very primitive, but it definitely was a Halloween themed game.
But yeah, as far as all that goes, like there's a lot of scary games, a lot of stuff that has a dark atmosphere and stuff, but nothing specifically Halloween other than those ones that I can think of that we mentioned. But there is one that I forgot about until just this moment.
What'd you
Splatterhouse.
I see. I don't think I'm even familiar with Splatterhouse.
Splatterhouse was a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you go through like really gory haunted houses. You play this character who wears a hockey mask. You know where he got that. And he's fighting monsters and stuff. Like, there's a lot of stuff with monsters, but Splatterhouse definitely has the Halloween vibe. The B-movie, fun feel. Yeah, Splatterhouse. That's one more, but beyond that, I've got nothing else that's specifically Halloween.
So everyone, make sure that you're letting us know. If we left out a Halloween game that you love, make sure you let us know. We'll check it out. We'll talk about it. So let us know which ones we might have overlooked.
And if it's really good, maybe we'll even do a playthrough of it for the channel.
Absolutely. So I want to go actually into Hatter's favorite topic here, and I want to discuss Halloween vibed or themed music.
Oh yeah, I've got a few things to definitely talk about there. Do you have anything offhand?
The first two things that come to mind. One, because we mentioned Nightmare Before Christmas, Danny Elfman and any of the music from Nightmare Before Christmas, people listen to that all year round. It's it's a lot of people's favorite Halloween vibed music. I've heard it done to like full metal tracks. I mean, they've done a ton of stuff with it. Very good, very classic, very explicitly Halloween. So that's always really good. And then someone else that I just thought of that me and you hadn't discussed, but is 100% Halloween music, is Voltaire.
You know, the funny thing is I was about to mention Voltaire too, because it was one we didn't think of. So it's kind of funny we hit the same wavelength there, but I'll continue.
Absolutely. Anyone who's not familiar with Voltaire, he is one of the original, like, fun goth musicians. Extremely good. He's done stuff for Bill and the Grim Adventures of Bill and Mandy. He has music that's directly related to Halloween, music that's related to Edgar Allan Poe, all sorts of, if it's gothy, he's definitely done it. All of his music feels very Halloween to me. He's had stuff about vampires and zombies and you name it, but a lot of it is even explicitly Halloween-y. Love Voltaire. Super cool guy and super cool music that definitely fits the vibe.
Yeah, I got to meet him on my 27th birthday. Like, I went to a show, and he hung out with me, and, you know, we had some drinks, we talked, and even after the show, he gave me, like, a bunch of free CDs. He just kept handing me stuff. He's like, yeah, happy birthday, man. And I got to get on stage with him and sing part of When You're Evil. One of my favorite moments was I started doing, like, my metal voice, because, like, that's one of the main things I was doing. And he's like, what, are we in Norway here? And then I kept singing. He said, I didn't say stop. Great guy, though.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's just a really nice guy. Like, when you meet him, it just feels like you're hanging out with somebody you knew. And they say that about a lot of, like, musicians and quote-unquote celebrities. No, it's actually true about him, 100%.
One thing I have noticed is it seems the more that someone is in the horror realm, you know, the more whatever they're into is more in the horror vibe. Usually the nicer people they are. The scarier they are, the nicer they are, in my experience.
Yeah, very true. The dude from Cannibal Corpse, George Corpse Grinder Fisher, he loves Christmas and Legos. he like plays Santa. He'll like randomly decide to be Santa for a bunch of kids and bring them presents. Like he's like the nice, and I met him once too. Not like quite as much as like I didn't get to hang out with him the way I did with like Voltaire and stuff. But I got to meet him, and yeah, it just feels like he's a really nice guy. He likes to hang out with his fans, and yeah, the scarier someone is, the chances are they're a really nice person.
Which is awesome. So those are my two big thoughts. I know you have several. So Hatter, take us through some excellent Halloween music.
One of the big ones that I can think of that I thought of while we were writing this, Harley Poe, and that's what that came from me talking about Pumpkinhead. That I thought of him. He's basically this guy who sings about monsters and horror and like gore and blood and violence and stuff. A lot of it is to deal with his own mental issues and stuff. And yeah, like it was never unclear that that was the case. But he had songs about Pumpkinhead specifically. He had songs about like American Psycho. He had just songs about, you know, wanting to enjoy corpses a little too much. Songs about zombies, just like a little of everything. Now, recent albums. Sorry, my headphones made a funny sound. It distracted me. But recent albums were more just specifically on the like his depression and stuff without the lens of horror. But you know, point is, Harley Poe, one to check out, and like really, that's the main one I wanted to talk about. King Diamond was the other because I mentioned earlier that I dressed as him for Halloween for a bunch of years in a row. King Diamond. I'm trying to think of what the best albums would be. I think my personal favorite was I think it was called Voodoo, and it's about exactly what you think it's about. There was one called The Puppet Master, which is about this guy who steals people's eyes and puts them in puppets, and they start to inhabit the puppets. There's his most famous one by far is Them, which is about basically a haunted house. It's this guy's grandma comes home from an asylum, and it turns out she's a witch, and his spirit gets trapped in the house, and there's a sequel and everything. Guys, there's a reason they call him the Stephen King of heavy metal. Check him out. King Diamond.
And I just love that idea because I'm a big fan of narrative anything. So an entire narrative album, it just sounds amazing.
And I was briefly in a King Diamond cover band because I could hit the high notes he hits. Listen to him and you'll see what I mean.
That is amazing. So I will say that there's just a couple of other like weird media where we definitely see Halloweeny stuff and Halloween inspired stuff. Like we should talk about comics. And when I say comics, there is the, you know, of course we talked about Batman and some of those comics like that. But there are the comics like the old traditional comics, like back when Tales from the Crypt was itself a comic series. Some of those were explicitly Halloween themed. And to me, anything Tales from the Crypt always has like a little bit of a Halloween vibe.
Oh, absolutely.
For one, because in the series, the Crypt Keeper himself looks like a Halloween decoration, so you're not going to get away from it feeling a little bit Halloween.
Absolutely. And like really, I will say anything that you feel like you were up late watching as a kid that you shouldn't have been watching, that's pretty Halloween.
And this is sort of an honorable mention, but we can't really discuss things that feel like Halloween without talking about Edgar Allan Poe. Everything Edgar Allan Poe makes me feel like it's Halloween.
Oh yeah, just the general atmosphere. And yeah, let's be honest, we all love Edgar Allan Poe, but his stuff got really over the top melodramatic at times, and that's definitely Halloweenish.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, over the top, melodramatic, weird as crap. But I adore everything. I was obsessed with like The Raven and stuff like that when I was a kid. For a while, I could recite the whole thing. I can't do it anymore. I could probably only do like the first quarter now.
You know my favorite line.
What's your favorite line, Hatter?
And his eyes.
Ah, and I did know that. I was asking him for you guys. And his eyes had all the seemings of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming cast a shadow on them.
That just gives you such an image, and oh, so good, so good. It puts the image right in your mind.
Yeah, I adore The Raven. Guys, if anyone wants to hear me recite the entire thing of The Raven on a podcast, I would be more than happy to do so. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know.
I want to recite something too. What am I going to recite?
No, guys, tell Hatter what he has to recite. We want to vote in the comments and everything, so let us know what you want Hatter to recite.
And don't say the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. I don't have all day.
Do El Dorado. That one's short, and it's a Poe, so it technically fits.
Yeah, you know what? I think I am going to pick some of the smaller ones because I got to work on some of my voice stuff. It'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, guys, down in the comments, pick some short stories, some Edgar Allan Poe poems, or some darker poems that I could recite in shorts, and I will do that for you.
Oh, I can do El Dorado. I mentioned El Dorado because that's always my go-to. Because as I am a poet and I want to always be able to recite short things, so I can do El Dorado. Gaily bedight the gallant knight in sunshine or in shadow, had journeyed long and singing a song in search of El Dorado. But he grew old, this knight so bold, and o'er his heart a shadow fell as he found no spot of ground that looked like El Dorado. And when his strength failed him at length, he met a pilgrim shadow. Where can it be, questioned he, this place called El Dorado? Over the mountain of the moon and through the valley of the shadow. Ride boldly, ride, the shade replied. You seek El Dorado.
Dang, you just kind of have that memorized, huh?
Oh yeah, that's one of my. I always joke that everyone should be able to recite at least a couple of poems from memory, just in case they ever need to impress someone. The other one, if I want to be silly about it, and someone says, "Hey, can you recite a poem?" My response would be, "Absolutely." See the wonderful bird, the pelican. His beak can hold more than his belly can. He can hold more in his beak than he can eat in a week, but I don't know how in the hell he can.
Oh, I got one. I got one.
Go for it, Hatter.
Okay. There once was a man from Nantucket.
I'm going to need you to stop.
Oh, right. That's right. YouTube guidelines.
But there is actually a dirty and a non-dirty version of that one, by the way, that limerick.
Yeah, but what's the point of the non-dirty one?
I'm not sure. The dirty one is, of course, my favorite. And they are unrelated to each other. I will do the non-dirty one just because I know everyone knows the dirty one. And if you don't, unfortunately, I cannot do this on YouTube or Spotify or whatever with the dirty version, wherever you're listening to this. The undirty version is there once was a man from Nantucket who kept all his cash in a bucket. He had a daughter named Nan who ran off with the man, and as for the bucket, Nantucket.
You know what? I'm gonna recite the dirty one right now.
Matt, no, don't do it. You're gonna get us, I don't know, demonetized, banned, or have the FBI show up at our door. Just don't do it.
There once was a man from Nantucket.
And what you just didn't hear was us editing out everything Hatter just said.
Do I really have to?
Yes, Hatter, you have to.
All right. In fact, I think that version was worse than the original.
I think it was.
Yeah, I guess. Fine. We'll edit it out.
So everyone, I want to thank you guys for joining us. This has been our Halloween episode. Halloween is one of the nearest and dearest things to our hearts because, of course, Halloween is where everyone gets a start in horror. And as a horror podcast, you almost can't exist without Halloween. We thank you guys for coming back with us and joining us. This is going to be a really awesome season. We're glad that we're able to bring the show out of hiatus and get back to having a really fun podcast for you guys.
And you know what? I think I would like to see if we can possibly do a longer season. For those of you who don't know, Gray has gone to full-time content creation, right, Gray?
Absolutely. Which, of course, shameless plug. Check us out over on TikTok, my thegraymattersblog.com, The Gray Matters blog on TikTok. And we are full content creation over there. That's what I do for a living now. So it's absolutely awesome. And we're able to bring a lot more content to you guys.
And funny enough, I was doing full-time content creation, but I took a temp job to put some more money back into it. So we kind of switched roles here. We were having to work around his schedule because he was working. Now we got to work around my schedule, which is kind of funny. But at the same time, I still want to keep this the podcast going for longer before the next hiatus. Would you say you're on the same page about that, Gray?
Absolutely. So we're going to definitely try to have this with briefer hiatuses, preferably none, and just keep a good steady supply coming to you guys so that you get your daily fix of horror.
Well, maybe not daily, but at least weekly.
Well, your daily fix. You can listen to the video once a day until we put out another one.
Yeah. And we'll also be doing other shorter form videos, but none of that's related. Point being, we're going to be doing a lot more with this, especially now that Gray is full-time content creation. Me, I can work and do content at the same time pretty well. I've done it before. I can't focus on one thing at a time anyway. But we will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for sticking around. For the new fans, we have a crazy backlog here you can check out, and we hope you will. Until then, this has been Hatter.
And I'm Gray, and thank you for joining us at the Station Between Stations Liminal Radio.